Today we'll hear an interesting pastime with Markandeya Rishi, before whom Supreme Lord appeared at Narayana Rishi. So yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. Vijay, when are you ready, you can start, Madhi. If it's too many verses for you today, please let us know. You can pause and one of us can read it also.
Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Namam Chiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nasta Pradeshya Bharesha Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naisteki. Okay, today we are reading from Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration, Chapter 8, Markandeya's Prayers to Narayana Rishi. Text 1. Sri Saunakya said, O Sutta, may you live a long life. O saintly one, best of speakers, please continue speaking to us. Indeed, only you can show men the path out of the ignorance in which they are wandering. 2 through 5. Authorities say that Markandeya Rishi, the son of Merkandu, was an exceptionally long-lived sage who was the only survivor at the end of Brahma's day, when the entire universe was merged in the flood of annihilation. But this same Markandeya Rishi, the foremost descendant of Bhrigu, took birth in my own family during the current day of Brahma, and we have not yet seen any total annihilation in this day of Brahma. Also, it is well known that Markandeya, while wandering helplessly in the great ocean of annihilation, saw in those fearful waters a wonderful personality, an infant boy lying alone within the fold of a banyan leaf. O Sutta, I am most bewildered and curious about this great sage, Markandeya Rishi. O great yogi, you are the universally accepted as the authority on all the Puranas. Therefore, kindly dispel my confusion. Text 6. Sutta Goswami said, O great sage of Saunaka, your very question will help remove everyone's illusions, for it leads to the topics of Lord Narayana, which cleanse away the contamination of this Kali age. Text 7 through 11. After being purified by his father's performance of the prescribed ritual leading to Markandeya's Brahmanical initiation, Markandeya studied the Vedic hymns and strictly observed the regulative principles. He became advanced in austerity and Vedic knowledge and remained a lifelong celibate, appearing most peaceful with his matted hair and his clothing made of bark. He furthered his spiritual progress by carrying the mendicant's water pot, staff, sacred thread, brahmachari belt, black deerskin, lotus seed prayer beads, and bundles of kusha grass. At the sacred junctures of the day, he regularly worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in 5 forms: the sacrificial fire, the sun, his spiritual master, the brahmanas, and the super soul within his heart. Morning and evening, he would go out begging, and upon returning, he would present all the food he had collected to his spiritual master. Only when his spiritual master invited him would he silently take his one meal of the day. Otherwise, he would fast. Thus, devoted to the austerity and Vedic study, Markandeya Rishi worshipped the supreme master of the senses, the personality of Godhead, for countless millions of years, and in this way, he conquered unconquerable death. Text 12. Lord Brahma, Bhrigu Muni, Lord Shiva, Prajapati Daksha, the great sons of Brahma, and many others among the human beings, demigods, forefathers, and ghostly spirits, all were astonished by the achievement of Markandeya Rishi. Text 13. In this way, the devotional mystic Markandeya maintained rigid celibacy through penance, study of the Vedic and self-discipline, study of the Vedas and self-discipline. With his mind thus free of all disturbances, he turned it inward and meditated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lies beyond the material senses. Text 14. While the mystic sage thus concentrated his mind by powerful yoga practice, the tremendous period of 6 lifetimes of Manu passed by. 15. O Brahmana, during the 7th reign of Manu, the current age, Lord Indra came to know of Markandeya's austerities and became fearful of his growing mystic potency. Thus, he tried to impede the sage's penance. 16. To ruin the sage's spiritual practice, Lord Indra sent Cupid, beautiful celestial singers, dancing girls, the season of spring, and the sandalwood scented breeze from the Malaya hills, along with greed and intoxication personified. 17. O most powerful Saunaka, they went to Markandeya's hermitage on the northern side of the Himalaya mountains, where the Pushpa Bhadra River passes by the famous peak Chitra. 18 through 20. Groves of pious trees decorated the holy ashram of Markandeya Rishi, and many saintly brahmanas lived there, enjoying the abundant, pure, sacred ponds. The ashram resounded with the buzzing of intoxicated bees and the cooing of excited cuckoos, while jubilant peacocks danced about. Indeed, many families of maddened birds crowded that hermitage. The springtime breeze sent by Lord Indra entered there, carrying cooling drops of spray from nearby waterfalls. Fragrant from the embrace of forest flowers, that breeze entered the hermitage and began evoking the lusty spirit of Cupid. 21. Springtime then appeared in Markandeya's ashram. Indeed, the evening sky, glowing with the light of the rising moon, became the very face of spring, and sprouts and fresh blossoms virtually covered the multitude of trees and creepers. 22. Cupid, the master of many heavenly women, then came there holding their bows and arrows. He was followed by groups of Gandharvas playing musical instruments and singing. 23. These servants of Indra found the sage sitting in meditation, having just offered his prescribed oblations into the sacrificial fire. His eyes closed in trance, he seemed invincible, like fire personified. 24. The woman danced before the sage, and the celestial singers sang to the charming accompaniment of drums, cymbals, and venas. 25. While the son of passion, greed personified, spring, and the other servants of Indra all tried to agitate Markandeya's mind, Cupid drew his 5-headed arrow and fixed it upon his bow. 26, 27. The Apsara Punjikashtali made a show of playing with a number of toy balls. Her waist seemed weighed down by her heavy breast, and the wreath of flowers in her hair became disheveled. As she ran about after the balls, glancing here and there, the belt of her thin garment loosened, and suddenly the wind blew her clothes away. 28. Cupid, thinking he had conquered the sage, then shot his arrow. But all these attempts to seduce Markandeya proved futile, just like the useless endeavors of an atheist. 29. O learned Saunaka, while Cupid and his followers tried to harm the sage, they felt themselves being burned alive by his potency. Thus, they stopped their mischief, just like children who have aroused a sleeping snake. 30. O Brahmana, the followers of Lord Indra had impudently attacked the saintly Markandeya, yet he did not succumb to any influence of false ego. For great souls, such tolerance is not at all surprising. 31. The mighty King Indra was most astonished when he heard of the mystic prowess of the exalted sage Markandeya and saw how Cupid and his associates had become powerless in his presence. 32. Desiring to bestow his mercy upon the saintly Markandeya, who had perfectly fixed his mind in self-realization through penance, Vedic study, and observance of regulative principles, the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally appeared before the sage in the forms of Nara and Narayana. 33, 34. One of them was of a whitish complexion, the other blackish, and they both had 4 arms. Their eyes resembled the petals of blooming lotuses, and they wore garments of black deerskin and bark, along with the 3-stranded sacred thread. In their hands, which were most purifying, they carried the mendicant's water pot, straight bamboo staff, and lotus seed prayer beads, as well as the all-purifying Vedas in the symbolic form of bundles of durba grass. Their bearing was tall, and their yellow effluence the color of radiant lightning. Appearing as austerity personified, they were being worshipped by the foremost demigods. 35. These 2 sages, Nara and Narayana, were the direct personal forms of the Supreme Lord. When Markandeya Rishi saw them, he immediately stood up and then, with great respect, offered them obeisances by falling down flat on the ground like a stick. 36. The ecstasy of seeing them completely satisfied Markandeya's body, mind, and senses, and caused the hairs on his body to stand on end and his eyes to fill with tears. Overwhelmed, Markandeya found it difficult to look at them. 37. Standing with his hands folded in supplication and his head bowed in humility, Markandeya felt such eagerness that he imagined he was embracing the 2 lords. In a voice choked with ecstasy, he repeatedly said, I offer you my humble obeisances. 38. He gave them sitting places and washed their feet, and then he worshipped them with presentation of agria, sandalwood pulp, fragrant oils, incense, and flower garlands. 39. Markandeya Rishi once again bowed down at the lotus feet of those 2 most worshipable sages who were sitting at ease, ready to bestow all mercy upon him. He then addressed them as follows. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mati. So it's a nice pastime. Essentially, remember in the 7th chapter, Suta Goswami was narrating to sages of Naimisharanya, and he paused at the end of the chapter with saying that I have narrated everything about expansion of Vedas, coming from Vyasadeva and expanding to his disciples and his disciples of disciples, like that, all the Vedic literature like that. He told. We heard how all the 4 Vedas were expanded, including Puranas were expanded like that in the last chapter. So right after that explanation, Saunaka Rishi recognized that, oh my God, Suta Goswami might stop the narration of Srimad Bhagavatam night like that. That's what his thought process was. So then he also remembered, it seems, in the 24th verse of last chapter, there's mention about all the Puranas. If you remember, all the 18 Puranas names are given: Bhagavad Purana, Matsya Purana, Kurma Purana, Narada Purana, like that. One of the Purana name is Markandeya Purana. So that is the context that reminded Sonak Rishi, oh, let me clarify confusion about Markandeya Rishi I have, like that. That's what he remembered his question now. That's why first of all he says, O Sutta, may you live a long life. He's blessing him because Sonak Rishi is elder to Sutta Goswami. And then please continue speaking to us. Only you can show men the path out of ignorance in which they are wandering. So he is glorifying Sutta Goswami that and encouraging him to speak further, number 1. Number 2 is saying only you can give the path of general people are in ignorance. So you can give the path for them to come out of the ignorance, like that is saying. This point is important because in 2 verses now he will confirm. Sutta Goswami will confirm what is the path for getting out of ignorance, like that. So yeah. So that's why he's encouraging him to speak now. Okay, now next going to text 2 to 5. He starts to describe Markandeya Rishi. He says, authorities say that Markandeya Rishi, note, he's saying authorities say, not just he heard something somewhere, something, not like that. He said, he heard from authorities only. Authorities say that Markandeya Rishi, the son of Mrikandu, was exceptionally long-lived sage. So basically, he had a doubt. Doubt was Markandeya Rishi, he heard that Markandeya Rishi was son of Mrikandu, lived for a very, very long time. And in such a long time, that he was living for 1 day of Brahma, 1 night of Brahma, which is 4.32 billion years, like that 1 day, and same amount 4.32 billion years night time. And then the next Brahma's day also he survived. And then during the annihilation time, night time of Brahma, he was in the devastating waters of the annihilation. And that time, it is very famously heard that he saw a small baby, beautiful baby in the banyan leaf, like that. So I heard this before from authorities, number one. But what is not confirming, what is the doubt he has is, but Markandeya Rishi was my previous, what do you say, forefathers only. Is now my dynasty only. And then he was born in this Brahma, this current day of Brahma only. Then how come this incident they describe that he has lived for whole day of Brahma, whole night of Brahma, and then like that? That's the doubt he had. So he wanted him to clear up that confusion that he had. So yeah, now actually Bhujan Prabhu in his study guide he gives the how Markandeya Rishi's life story actually a little bit briefly. So it's interesting. So I'll briefly mention it. Basically, it describes that this father of Markandeya Rishi, Mrikandu, was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, it seems. But he and his wife did not have any sons, any children at all. So they, Mrikandu Rishi and his wife, they worshipped, they did great austerities and worshipped Lord Shiva to get a child, it seems. That time, Lord Shiva appeared after doing a lot of penances and austerities. Lord Shiva appeared before Mrikandu, who is the father of Markandeya, and gave him two choices, it seems. What are the two choices? One choice is that you'll get a impious, unintelligent, foolish son. Impious, not so great. Unintelligent, foolish son, who will live for long life. That's choice number one. Choice number two, he says, you can have a pious, pure, and devoted son who lived only for 16 years. Then Mrikandu Rishi picked the second choice, it seems. That means he wanted a son who is very pious, devoted, and pure, but who lives only for 16 years, like that. That's what he picked as a choice. Then Shiva gave that benediction. Then this Markandeya was born. He was supposed to live only for 16 years, but he was very bright, obedient, and devoted to Supreme Lord, it seems, Lord Hari. And he studied the Vedas and other Shastras. But the parents were worried all the time. Oh, he will only live for 16 years. He will only live for 16 years, like that. So Markandeya, the son, understood that his parents' sadness. So he finally asked his father what is going on, and father explained Lord Shiva's benediction that only he will live for 16 years, which now it feels like curse. That time it was benediction because he didn't have children. Getting a child, even short-lived, is great. But now it feels like curse. Oh, he'll only live for 16 years like that. Then Markandeya Rishi, as a boy, young boy, he took permission from his parents and went to the forest to worship Lord Shiva, it seems. and he was worshipping Lord Shiva and performed austerities, and he was worshipping a linga of Lord Shiva, who is the greatest devotee of Lord Hari. Then on the 16th birthday, when life is supposed to end for this boy, Yamaraja comes, it seems. Yamaraja comes and then he throws his nose at this boy. But this boy was worshipping Lord Shiva. Seeing Yamaraja come and throw his nose, he tightly embraced the Shivalinga, it seems. And then when he embraced, the Yamaraja threw the nose, right? That went and not only struck this boy, but also the Yamalinga, not Shivalinga, like that. So normally this noose is meant to take out the soul from the body. But now the noose also went on the Shivalinga. So then when Yamaraja pulled the noose, the Shivalinga ruptured, it seems. And then Lord Shiva came to protect his devotee, it seems. So then Yamaraja, actually, who was the death himself, was killed by Lord Shiva. And then later, by prayers of demigods, his life was restored, it seems. And then that time, Lord Shiva, because he appeared before Markandeya Rishi, he blessed Markandeya to remain 16 years forever, it seems, for long, basically. So that means not only dies at 16 years, but he'll remain at 16 years of age for a long time like that. So that is the backstory behind Markandeya Rishi, it seems. How he is living for such a long time. So now that's the point. Back to this story here, Bhagavatam. We're in the sixth verse now. So basically, Sudha Goswami asked the question about Markandeya Rishi, the confusion he had. So now Sudha Goswami responds back. Now he answers the question for first verse. He says, your very question will remove everyone's illusion. Why? Because it leads to topics of Lord Narayana, which cleanse away the contamination of this Kali Yuga. So basically, he's telling just by hearing Krishna Katha, our contamination of Kali Yuga, which is illusion, will disappear like that. Because that is the question he was asking earlier. That you only can, that's why he was glorifying, you only can show the path of leading people out of illusion like that. Now is confirming the path of leading out of illusion, which is hearing Krishna Katha. So we should also be enthusiastic to hear Krishna Katha. Then he's further described the next verses that Markandeya Rishi was received the second initiation, Brahmanical initiation. That time it's called Brahmanical initiation from his father. And then he studied the Vedic hymns and strictly observed the regulative principles. He became advanced in austerity and Vedic knowledge and remained a lifelong celibate, it seems. So he was appearing very peaceful with matted hair, and clothing was made of bark. And he further progressed spiritually by carrying a water pot, staff, the stick that sannyasis carry, like the brahmacharis and sannyasis carry, sacred thread, brahmachari belt, black deer skin, lotus seed prayer beads, and a bundle of kusa grass, it seems. And he worshipped nicely Supreme Lord 3 times a day in different forms also. And then morning, even he go out begging and beg alms and give it to his spiritual master. And only if his spiritual master calls him for food, then he goes and accepts the food like that. Otherwise, he'll stay fasting if his spiritual master doesn't call. In fact, this is one of the important things that is described about brahmachari life. Because when they go out for begging and bring the items, whatever they get as begging, they don't think, look, I got this begging. So the alms, so these are all mine. They don't have that tendency anymore. They're trained to get that whatever they got from begging, and they're trained to offer it to spiritual master. That means they're trained to understand everything they're getting, even with their own effort to get begging alms, everything belongs to spiritual master. That is the consciousness brahmachari is trained in, number one. Then only they become so submissive to spiritual master, only spiritual master calls them for dinner or lunch, whatever it is, meals, they'll come and accept the meals. Otherwise, they don't even ask, I'm hungry, can you give me food? Like that, they don't even ask that. I mean, they're so subservient to spiritual master. Of course, spiritual master will take care of this disciple, but that was how they were trained like that. So like that, he was trained, he was devoted to austerity and Vedic study, and he worshipped the Supreme Master of Senses, the Supreme Lord, for countless millions of years. And in this way, he conquered unconquerable death, like that is described here. So now text 12 describes several great personalities like Brahma, Bhrigumuni, Lord Shiva, Daksha. Everybody were astonished by seeing this achievement of Markandeya Rishi, that is staying for so long, worshipping like that. So then he text 13 describes Markandeya Rishi followed his sadhana strictly. Whatever his sadhana was, which is maintaining celibacy through penance, study of the Vedas, and self-discipline. Mm. And then he meditated on the Supreme Lordship. So he achieved all these powers because of the uh, following the spiritual master and following the self-discipline in worshiping the Supreme Lord. So that's the inspiration we can also take by maintaining the discipline in worshiping the Supreme Lord, and by being devoted to Supreme Lord, we get all the desirable things like that. Now, next verse. While he was concentrating his mind by powerful yoga practice, this Markandeya Rishi, 6 manvantras passed away, and he came to the 7th manvantara. So now this section starts where Indra tries to disturb his meditation, because Indra thought, oh, he's trying to come take my position like that. That's how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments. So during the 7th manvantara, Lord Indra became fearful. So he tried to uh, stop the penance of this sage Markandeya Rishi. So what did he do? He sent Cupid, beautiful celestial singers, dancing girls, in the season of spring, the sandalwood scented breeze from the Malay hills, also greed, which is the symbol of passion, and the intoxication personified. He sent all of them. Then they all went to the Markandeya Rishi's hermitage ashram, which is on the northern side of Himalayas, it seems. And then this beautiful description how the atmosphere turned into nice spring season, everything was wonderful to agitate the senses of Markandeya Rishi. Basically, groves of pious trees were there decorating the holy ashram. Many saintly Brahmas were living there, it seems. Uh, there were sacred ponds, pure ponds, and the intoxicating bees were buzzing, it seems. And the cooing of excited cuckoos were there, cuckoo birds were there, peacocks were dancing. Um, and the springtime breeze was flowing, carrying drops of spray from waterfalls that makes it cooling. And then it was fragrant from the embrace of the forest flowers that bring the breeze was bringing a nice fragrance. And then sprouts and fresh blossoms virtually covered the trees and creepers at that time, it seems. And then Cupid then came there with his bow and arrows, and he was followed by groups of Gandharvas playing musical instruments and singing, it seems. So then um, when they all came, they saw that the sage was sitting in meditation, his eyes closed in trance, and he seemed invincible, like fire personified. Nobody can disturb him like that, they felt, it seems. Then the women were dancing before the sage, celestial singers were singing uh, along with the accompaniment of Mridanga, Kartal, and Veena, it seems. And then son of passion, greed personified, spring, and others tried to agitate Markandeya's mind, it seems. And Cupid drew 5-headed arrow, it seems, and fixed it upon his bow. Then one Apsara named Punjikastali, she's described as beautiful, and she was trying to agitate the sage Markandeya Rishi with her beauty and her moves like that. And then Cupid shot his arrow also. But even then, Markandeya Rishi, nothing happened to Markandeya Rishi. So mm, when the Cupid and his followers were trying to disturb Markandeya Rishi like that, they felt that they are getting burnt alive like that. They felt it seems by the potency of Markandeya Rishi. So then they stopped their mischief, just like children who have aroused a sleeping snake. Vishwanath Chakravarti addressed in his commentary, why is they compare it to child seeing a waking sleeping snake? Why they are compared like that analogy? Is because Markandeya Rishi got little lust it seems because of the agitation. So then he became little angry it seems. But then Markandeya Rishi controlled his lust and also anger both. So that is why he's described, he was like a raising of a waking sleep like that. So then, mm, so Markandeya Rishi did not succumb to his false ego or ahankara. So he exhibited the tolerance like that. And then Indra was very astonished to see to hear about this great mystic powers of this sage Markandeya from his Cupid and other followers, because they came back and told him. So then, at that time, actually, desiring to give mercy, Narayana Rishi, Supreme Lord in the form of Narayana, comes before Markandeya to give his darshan and mercy also. And the beautiful form is described here. One of them is in whitish complexion, other was in blackish complexion. Both were having four arms, is described. Their eyes were like lotus flowers. And then they were wearing deer skin and bark as a clothes. And basically they were dressed like a Brahmana, basically, Brahmana sannyasi like that. They were carrying a mendicant water pot, staff, lotus seed prayer beads, and they're carrying darba grass, which is representing the Vedas, it seems. Like that, they are appearing like austerity personified, because they are meant to do austerities, Narayana Rishi. We'll hear more about them in the coming chapters also. So then, is when Markandeya Rishi saw them, he immediately stood up, and with great respect, he offered his obeisances by offering Dandavat Pranam, fully falling down flat. And in the ecstasy of seeing them, Markandeya Rishi's body, mind, and senses were completely satisfied by having darshan of the Lord. And he was in ecstasy with the hair standing on the end, and his eyes were filled with tears. Because of that, he was not able to see them properly because the eyes were filled with tears. And he stood with the hands in supplication like this and in humble mood, and he started to offer uh, prayers in a voice choked up with ecstasy, it seems. He said, I offer you humble obeisances. And actually, before I offered prayers, he gave them sitting places and he washed their feet. And then he worshipped him with various articles of worship like Aarti. And then he bowed down again before them. And then he started to offer the prayers. And that's where we pause today. Tomorrow we'll hear a beautiful prayers that Markandeya Rishi offered to Narayana. That's where we can pause. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let's offer business to all the devotees of the Lord. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kupasindubhyavacha Paditana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Thank you so much.
Prabhuji, I have a Markandeya Rishi has composed the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, right?
I do not know Matari.
Okay, because I don't know. Previously, I used to worship Lord Shiva. So I used to chant her Mahamrityunjaya mantra. Then I heard that Markandeya Rishi actually.
Oh, you're sharing. Okay, good. Yeah, nice. Thank you for sharing.
I'm asking, like I'm confirming, like whether.
I don't have any clue. Never heard about it so far.
Okay. Then I can search in the internet or somewhere.
Okay, sure.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.